On this Monday night, the push for answers into that tragic tour bus rollover near Jasper. The pain for loved ones and the unsolved questions as the investigation gets going.
We were waiting for them and we saw them speeding away and careening off the side.
Grief for family and friends at the funeral for two young sisters found dead in Quebec. The shift of focus for police, still searching for the main suspect, their father. The positive progress for two vaccine trials labeled safe and promising in the critical search for a COVID-19 cure. And the astronomical unveiling that is out of this world.
Each one of those dots represents a galaxy.
The new 3D map painting a much bigger and brighter picture of the universe.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Farah Nasser.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. We begin with the tragedy in the Rocky Mountains. We're learning tonight who was on an Ice Explorer tour bus when it rolled over in Jasper National Park. 3 people died, 24 are injured, several in critical condition. As investigators look at the final moments leading up to the crash, Heather Yourex-West has more on the human toll of what should have been an unforgettable adventure.
The Saskatchewan First Nations community of Canoe Narrow, Saskatchewan is in mourning. Family members tell Global News 24-year-old Dion DeRoche was one of 3 people killed at Alberta's Columbia Icefield Saturday.
We were waiting for them about 150, 200 meters away to come down that hill, and then we saw them speeding away and careening off the side and then rolling over 4 or 5 times off the side of the hill there.
Calgary's Vanya Kurtalitsa witnessed the crash with his family. They had been scheduled to take the 2 o'clock tour of the Athabasca Glacier, but had managed to get on an earlier bus on standby. The vehicle remained overturned on site at the foot of the glacier Monday as crews from the Transportation Safety Board, Alberta Occupational Health and Safety, and the RCMP continued their investigation. The company that operates the bus says it's been running tours on the glacier without any other major incident for nearly 40 years.
We average about 480,000 visitors a year in an average year, and we've been operating these vehicles since the early 80s. So we've had over 16 million passengers safely taken out onto the ice over all these years.
The Athabasca Glacier spills out from the vast Columbia Icefield. The front of the glacier, called the toe, is retreating because of climate change. What's left behind looks like a moonscape, a moraine made up of rugged debris that can vary from large boulders to very fine sediment and clay that can be treacherous for travel. RCMP say 2 other victims include a 28-year-old woman from Edmonton and a 58-year-old man from India. Their names have not been released. Calgary's Himanshu Lalaji told Global News Sunday he knew 10 people, including an infant, who were on the bus.
Husband and wife, they are my friends.
Yeah.
Their parents and the 4-month-old daughter.
They were all on there?
All on there, yeah. And there is another family from Edmonton, husband and wife. And there is one more family in Edmonton, husband and wife.
Lalaji's been able to visit some of his friends in hospital and has been told the baby is doing okay. A tour operator says the driver of the bus was also injured in the crash. 4 people remain in critical condition in hospital. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
It has been a very emotional day in the town of Lévis, Quebec. 2 young sisters, Norah and Romy Carpentier, were laid to rest.
There is no one in this line who wants to be here, but hundreds of people showed up at this funeral home for the visitation Monday to remember the 2 young lives lost. Norah, 11 years old, and Romy, just 6. It's a day of sadness, says this family member. It's awful, awful. Due to COVID-19, the funeral itself was small. Only close, direct family was allowed inside. A screen was set up outside for the public. The focus of the service was on remembering not the loss, but the smiles. Grief counselor Julie Masson worked with the family. She says the emphasis was on the joy and love Norah and Romy brought to everyone and everything. Senator Pierre-Hugues Boisvenu attended the visitation. His own daughter was murdered in 2002. It was his experience and recovery that he wanted the family to hear.
Rebuilding yourself is not easy. So you need people, you need other families that went through the same kind of drama, just to give them an example that it's possible to rebuild yourself.
Mike Armstrong, Global News, Lévis, Quebec.
Heated debate in Ottawa today over financial support for Canadians in the COVID-19 pandemic. While MPs on both sides of the aisle found common ground on assistance for people with disabilities, there are still divisions over changes to the emergency wage subsidy. Abigail Bimman reports.
In about 15 feet, there is a parked car on the left.
Physical distancing isn't easy when you're legally blind. Just one example of an extra COVID-19 challenge for people with disabilities.
Knowing how to navigate the lineups and see the markers on the floor is not something easily done when you don't have usable vision. Understanding signage on restaurant doors, coffee shop doors.
Elizabeth Mulder says the $600 one-time payment proposed by the Liberal government is a good start, but she's unimpressed with how long it's taking to roll out.
We are 22% of the population in Canada, and we're a population whose voice hasn't been heard.
It's not going to cover everyone. And that is a problem, and we're going to continue to fight.
The government says it will help 1.7 million Canadians, but admits problems with the system.
We had to use the tax system, and we had to use the pension system, and we will deliver, but it's not ideal. And it's easy to sit here and come up with excuses or reasons, but there aren't any. So I will commit today to ensure that we don't put our citizens in this position again moving forward.
While Conservatives support the disability aid, they have issues with the changes to the wage subsidy, which is also being debated.
We've highlighted ideas to make it simpler. You need a degree in mathematics to fully understand all the permutations and combinations that they've come up with.
It's a minority situation, but the Liberals should have enough support to pass the legislation. Meanwhile, for those living with disabilities, the wait is frustrating.
And now the people that are disabled or relying on extra disability support, the veterans and so on, they're waiting the longest. And it's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. Time to get the bill passed.
As for the wage subsidy, the proposed changes would expand the program both in length and eligibility, dropping the 30% decline in revenue requirement in favor of a sliding scale. Farah?
Abigail Bimman in Ottawa. Thank you, Abigail. Most of Ontario has moved into phase 3 of its reopening plan. Restaurants and bars are allowing people back inside, but that doesn't include Toronto just yet. Health officials say that's a good thing. As Jeff Semple reports, as communities open up, it's becoming clear that the indoor bar scene is uniquely suited to the spread of COVID-19.
This Toronto sports bar sits in the shadow of the Blue Jays Stadium in the heart of downtown. But with only the patio allowed to open, business is down 95%.
We're a sports bar without sports, like you said. And obviously tourism has been affected greatly.
By next week, Toronto will be one of the only Canadian cities where indoor dining and drinks remain off limits. And experts say for good reason.
Number one, it's indoors. Number two, you have people that are in close contact for a prolonged period of time. And at least for, let's say, a nightclub, you're talking more loudly.
The bar scene is blamed for outbreaks around the world. From Calgary to Montreal to multiple American cities, even South Korea, hailed for its handling of the pandemic, saw one bar hopper linked to 100 new cases. The actual numbers may be even higher because these outbreaks are notoriously tough to trace.
If you go to a bar and are inebriated and lose track of who you're socializing with, and suddenly I ask you, who have you been in close contact with in the past week, you're going to have a harder time answering that question.
Well, we do know there's a certain amount of COVID fatigue among our young people right now.
Indeed, most of Ontario's new confirmed cases are under the age of 39.
I heard the same numbers. I was shocked.
But despite his shock, the Premier is allowing almost all Ontario bars to open their doors, with hotspots Toronto, Peel and Windsor expected to follow by the end of the month. Tables must be spaced 2 meters apart and indoor capacity limited to 50.
So be it, right? We have to get this right.
This sports bar is going further, collecting customers' contact info and keeping tables small. He says the greatest risk to his business now is a second wave. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
Some disappointing news today for fans of the professional rugby team Toronto Wolfpack. The organization has announced it's backing out of the rest of the 2020 season due to overwhelming financial challenges presented by the pandemic. The team had been set to resume play in England on August 2nd. Authorities in France are imposing some strict new measures to try to curb new infections. Face masks are now mandatory in all indoor public spaces. Anyone caught violating the rule faces a fine of about 200 Canadian dollars. In Canada, the approach to making wearing face masks mandatory varies from province to province. But one thing is clear. Where they are compulsory, that rule may stay in effect until a vaccine is found for COVID-19. Never before has so much effort been concentrated on vaccine development. And tonight, there is some hopeful news. Researchers in the UK, the US, and China say their potential vaccines are showing promising results. But as Redmond Shannon reports, more research is needed to confirm their findings.
More than 150 possible COVID-19 vaccines are currently in development. A race not so much against each other, but against the ever-accelerating spread of the virus. This University of Oxford trial tested more than 1,000 healthy adults. They were aged 18 to 55. Half were given the COVID vaccine, the other half another control vaccine. The results appear to show that the experimental vaccine is safe with only mild side effects and that it provoked both types of immune response as expected. Researchers are still unsure how strong that response needs to be.
It may mean that we have to have a really strong response against coronavirus and we have to give more than one dose, and those have to be large doses of the vaccine to get that very strong response.
That will be part of the next 2 larger phases of the trial, where the people vaccinated are exposed to the virus.
And that needs time for those cases to accumulate within the clinical trial to give us confidence, statistically speaking, about whether the vaccine works.
There were similarly positive results Monday from a Pfizer vaccine trial and from China's CanSino. That company has partnered with the Canadian government to produce its vaccine. A team at Ontario's Western University is also working on a different potential vaccine.
I'm sure there will be more than one vaccine to be used to prevent the COVID-19 infections.
Oxford researchers have stressed that their potential vaccine still needs to be proven to work on older people and those with existing health conditions. Those groups will likely be at the front of the line for any rollout, which could happen at the end of this year at the earliest. Farah?
Redmond Shannon in London, thank you. To another innovation in the fight against COVID-19, a group of teen girls in one of the poorest countries in the world have come up with a way to help those dying from the disease. The young women aged 15 to 18 are part of an all-female robotics team known as the Afghan Dreamers. For 3 months, they have been working on a low-cost ventilator using old car parts. The device, which is pending approval, is partly based on a design by MIT, with experts from Harvard giving the teens guidance. Afghanistan has very few ventilators for its population. Regular ventilators can cost roughly $30,000. This one costs less than $1,000. Black boxes breakthrough. Coming up, the big development in the tug of war for truth over the downing of Ukraine Airlines Flight 752. Months after a Ukrainian airliner was shot down in Iran, audio from the plane's cockpit voice recorder has finally been downloaded and will be analyzed in the days ahead. All 176 people on board Flight PS 752 died. Among them, 55 Canadian citizens, 30 permanent residents, and many others with ties to Canada. Canadian officials are in Paris observing the process, but as Crystal Gamansing explains, there is no guarantee that we'll get access to this long-awaited information.
These images from the Bureau of Investigation and Analysis in Paris provide a glimpse into the decoding of data recorders from Flight PS 752. Canadians are observing the work.
We have 2 investigators. One is the lead investigator who actually went to Tehran in January and was able to visit the accident scene and examine the wreckage.
Amateur video made public after the disaster in January appeared to show a plane being hit. Iran later admitted the plane was struck by surface-to-air missiles. Most of the 176 people on board had Canada listed as their final destination. The victims' families want to know why airspace over Iran was open to commercial flights while missiles were being launched. It posted a statement saying, in part, "We remain hopeful that the international bodies and involved countries will uncover the truth for us families." But Iran is leading the investigation. All of the material retrieved goes to them.
We really don't know when or how or even if Iran will share that information with countries like Canada.
The International Coordination and Response Group says the work on the flight data recorders is long overdue, and it will keep applying pressure on Iran to provide accurate and timely answers. Crystal Gamanson, Global News, London.
Flight 752 was shot down in the aftermath of the U.S. assassination of top Iranian general Qasem Soleimani. Earlier today, Iran executed an alleged spy accused of passing intelligence on Soleimani's whereabouts to the CIA. The U.S. killed Soleimani in a drone strike in Baghdad back in January. Iran retaliated by launching a barrage of missiles at an American military base in Iraq. Hours later, the Ukrainian Airlines jet was shot down. Ahead, the frantic rescue mission to free a sperm whale trapped in fishing netting off the coast of Sicily.
You're watching Global National.
Italian rescuers are scrambling to try to free a sperm whale tangled in illegal fishing gear. The rescue mission is happening off an island near Sicily. Crews have been trying to cut their way through the fishing net, but it's extremely dangerous. The team says the animal is getting increasingly agitated. Authorities in the U.S. are trying to determine if a lawyer found dead in New York today is the shooter who opened fire at the home of a federal judge in New Jersey. Police say the suspect approached the family's home Sunday dressed as a FedEx driver and began shooting. Judge Esther Salas was in the basement at the time and was not injured. Her son was killed, and her husband, a defense lawyer, is in critical condition in the hospital. Salas has been a federal judge since 2011. She has presided over a few high-profile cases in recent years, including a number of gang violence cases. Up next, it's out of this world, the astronomical 3D map giving Earthlings the largest ever look at the universe. The United Arab Emirates has joined the race to explore Mars. The Hope probe blasted off from Japan for a 7-month journey to the Red Planet, where it will orbit and send back data about the atmosphere. It's expected to reach Mars in February of 2021, the year the UAE celebrates 50 years since the country's formation. There was an astronomical unveiling today. Astrophysicists gave us Earthlings the largest look at the universe ever. The new 3D map sheds light on 11 billion years of cosmic history. As Mike Drolet reports, it's opened up even more questions about what's out there.
We've come a long way since the earliest astronomers began etching their impressions of the universe. But not as far as science fiction would have us believe. Consider this map was cutting edge only 30 years ago.
Those maps, by comparison, just to use your analogy, really look very primitive compared to what has just been released.
He's referring to this, the largest 3D map of the universe ever created. It took 20 years of mapping by more than 100 of the world's top astrophysicists to put it all together.
So you're looking at the three-dimensional positions of galaxies. Each one of those dots represents a galaxy. Galaxies are wonderful things. You have disk galaxies, you have elliptical galaxies. In this map, we've translated all of that beauty and we've made a dot. And then what you're seeing is 2 million dots located in three-dimensional space. We're in the middle.
But perspective is everything. So consider the distance from the Earth to the Sun. And this map is 1,000,000 billion times larger. And it's getting bigger because of a mysterious force called dark energy, which nobody truly understands. It's theoretical Einstein-level stuff.
Rest assured, most of us who don't get into the nitty-gritty of theoretical cosmology also, get headaches when we listen to some of these seminars.
The earliest maps used simple science to show the outer edges of what we knew existed. sea monsters. So we've come a long way with high-tech telescopes and a better understanding of the origins of the universe. Imagine where we'll be a century from now. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
And that's Global National for this Monday from back here on Earth. I'm Farah Nasser. Tonight's Your Canada is Steep Rock, Manitoba. Does your community have a unique landmark you'd like to share with us? Email your pictures to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks so much for watching. Donna Friesen will be back here tomorrow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.